Please subscribe and share for more story. The warning came from a young repair technician named Evan Brooks, whispered across a narrow counter in a cluttered electronics shop. He leaned in close, his voice tight with fear. "Ma'am, you need to cancel every card you own. Change all your passwords. And you need to leave." Margaret Hale, 62 years old, felt the room tilt. She steadied herself with both hands. "Evan," she whispered, "what are you talking about?" He turned the phone toward her, the phone her daughter-in-law had dropped off that morning. The cracked screen was fixed, but what glowed beneath it felt deadly. Until that gray Tuesday afternoon, Margaret believed her life followed a calm, predictable rhythm. She lived in Portland with her husband Thomas, 65, after nearly 40 years of marriage. Thomas was a retired bridge inspector, a man who trusted systems and logic. Margaret had taught history for 33 years. She believed she understood human ambition, greed, and betrayal. They had one son, Daniel, now 36. For years earlier, he married Vivian, a polished financial analyst with an impressive resume and a smile that rarely reached her eyes. Vivian had appeared unexpectedly that morning, rain dripping from her tailored coat, panic in her voice. "Margaret, I'm so sorry to bother you," she said. "My phone slipped out of my hands. I have an investor call tomorrow, and Daniel's out of town." Margaret offered help immediately, mentioning Evan's shop. Vivian looked relieved. "You're a lifesaver." She handed over the phone. "The passcode is our anniversary date." Then she hurried off, leaving behind more than broken glass. When Margaret returned to the shop later that day, Evan's demeanor had changed completely. He locked the front door and lowered the blinds. "I didn't mean to see this," he said, swallowing hard. "But I had to test the screen." He opened a messaging app and clicked a folder labeled fallback. Margaret read the first message and felt her knees weaken. "She's slowing down. The doctor's notes are working." It was written by Daniel, her own son. The messages continued, cold, methodical, cruel. Vivian wrote about insurance policies totaling just over $900,000, about selling the house afterward, about starting clean somewhere no one asks questions. Daniel replied calmly, discussing timing, staging accidents, and separating the deaths so they wouldn't look suspicious. Margaret whispered, "They plan to kill Thomas, too." Evan guided her to a chair. "You need proof," he said. With shaking hands, she photographed every message, every timestamp. Margaret drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel until her fingers ached. Thomas was in the living room reading blueprints from an old project. "Everything sorted?" he asked gently. She sat beside him. "Turn off the television," she said. "I need you to stay calm." As Thomas read the messages, disbelief crossed his face, then devastation. "This isn't our boy," he whispered. Margaret squeezed his hand. "I wish it weren't." They didn't cry long. Fear forced clarity.
Passwords were changed.
Credit cards frozen. When Thomas checked their accounts, his voice dropped. "There are transfers, small ones. Over $11,000 in 6 months." Margaret closed her eyes. "We gave him power of attorney last year," she said. "After your surgery." The realization hit hard. Their trust had become a weapon against them. That evening, Vivian arrived to retrieve her phone. Margaret smiled and handed it over. "Good as new," she said warmly. Vivian powered it on, her eyes scanning the screen too carefully. "You didn't see anything odd, did you?" she asked lightly. "Nothing at all," Margaret replied. Vivian then mentioned memory tests, pretending concern. Margaret calmly corrected a detail Vivian herself had forgotten. For just a moment, irritation slipped through Vivian's smile before she recovered. That night, sleep refused to come. The house creaked in unfamiliar ways, every sound sharp with menace. Margaret found Thomas in the kitchen just after midnight, standing motionless by the window. "I keep seeing him as a child," Thomas said quietly. "Hiding during thunderstorms. Holding my hand." Margaret wrapped her arms around him. "This isn't our failure," she said, though her chest ached. "This is a choice he made." Still, the question lingered between them, heavy and unanswered. By morning, they uncovered another truth. Margaret logged into their insurance portal and froze. A new life insurance policy had been opened in her name 3 months earlier. Coverage, $750,000. Beneficiary, Daniel. I never signed this, she whispered. Thomas leaned closer. Digital authorization, he said grimly. Forged.
This wasn't a future plan.
It was already moving forward. Margaret scheduled an urgent appointment with their longtime physician, Dr. Lawson, claiming dizziness. He greeted her with professional concern. Daniel's been worried, he said. He's documented memory lapses. Margaret kept her voice steady. What lapses? Dr. Lawson hesitated. Confusion. Forgetting dates. He even shared videos. Margaret felt cold. They had been filming her, ordinary moments edited into something sinister. She showed Dr. Lawson the messages. His confidence collapsed instantly. My God, he whispered. I thought he was protecting you. Margaret leaned forward. You created a record that could explain my death, she said firmly. Fix it. He corrected her file, documenting her sound cognitive health, printing everything. If anything happens to me, Margaret said calmly, the police will hear about this meeting first. He nodded, shaken. From the doctor's office, Margaret went straight to the bank. I need to revoke Daniel's power of attorney immediately, she said. The manager hesitated. Your son said, my health is excellent, she interrupted. A deeper audit revealed new credit cards issued in Thomas's name and withdrawals Daniel had authorized. Cancel everything, Margaret said. Effective now. Walking out, she felt the full scope of the betrayal closing in. Her phone rang on the drive home. Daniel. Hey, Mom, he said warmly. Vivian told me you helped with her phone. Margaret swallowed. Of course.
He paused.
We were thinking of coming by for dinner tonight. Her pulse spiked. Tonight? Yes, he replied smoothly. We miss you. I'll make your favorite, she said after a beat. Lasagna. She ended the call and pulled over, shaking. At home, Margaret told Thomas everything. He went pale. They're coming here? Yes, she said. And he's nervous. I told him I saw Dr. Lawson. They agreed quickly. No food or drink from their guests. Everything recorded. Thomas retrieved an old digital voice recorder and hid it beneath the dining table. We act normal, Margaret said. Our lives depend on it. That evening, Daniel and Vivian arrived smiling, arms full of gifts. Daniel hugged Margaret too tightly. You look great, Mom, he said. Vivian handed over chocolates. Just a little treat. Margaret thanked her politely, already planning to throw them away. Conversation stayed shallow until Daniel asked, So, how did that doctor visit go? Margaret met his eyes calmly. Perfect. My memory tested above average for my age. Silence followed, just long enough to matter. Dinner unfolded like a carefully staged play. Daniel smiled too much, watching every movement. Vivian's eyes traced the room, lingering on cabinets and doorways. You seem sharper lately, Mom, Daniel said casually. Maybe today was a good day. Margaret set her fork down. Every day is a good day when nothing is wrong, she replied. Vivian exchanged a look with him. We've been thinking, Vivian added gently, about how big this house is for you two alone. Thomas leaned back, calm and deliberate. Actually, we're thinking of traveling, he said. A few months somewhere warm. The effect was immediate. Daniel stiffened. That doesn't sound wise, he said. With Mom's condition. Margaret smiled thinly. What condition? The silence stretched. Vivian recovered first. We just worry, she said. Family should help family. We're doing just fine, Margaret answered. The dinner ended soon after. The next morning, Vivian arrived alone carrying a thick envelope. I was nearby, she said too quickly. Just wanted to drop off some information. Inside were assisted living brochures and new legal forms. Thomas scanned them. An irrevocable power of attorney, he said slowly. Margaret looked at Vivian. You came here to take control of our lives. Vivian's polite mask slipped.
You're not well, she snapped.
Leave, Margaret said, pointing to the door. Vivian left without another word. Margaret didn't wait. She contacted Evelyn Moore, a lawyer with no ties to their family. After reviewing everything, Evelyn stood. "This is a conspiracy to commit murder," she said plainly. She escorted them to the police. Detective Harris listened carefully, then nodded. "You're in immediate danger," he said. Surveillance was installed in their home that afternoon. Margaret and Thomas were sent to a hotel under police protection. That evening, Daniel called again. "I'm at the house," he said lightly. "I brought that special wine you love." Margaret played along. "We'll be home soon." From the police monitoring room, they watched Daniel on camera. He poured powder into the wine, replaced Margaret's medication, and hid a listening device. Thomas covered his face. "He's trying to kill us tonight." Detective Harris's voice was steady. "We've got him." Vivian arrived minutes later. Police moved in fast. Sirens lit the street as both were arrested, backpacks filled with cash, passports, and one-way tickets. Lab tests confirmed the poison was lethal. Detective Harris spoke quietly. "If you'd gone home tonight, you wouldn't be alive." Margaret felt numb. The truth was unbearable, yet undeniable. Margaret saw Daniel once in custody. "Why?" she asked softly. He looked at her with no remorse. "It was money," he said. "You were just sitting on it." She didn't recognize the man speaking. The son she raised was gone. Vivian later confessed, revealing Daniel planned to kill her too. The betrayal had no bottom. Medical tests revealed the final horror. Margaret had been poisoned slowly for months. The dizziness, the confusion, it wasn't age. It was deliberate. They sold the house and moved to a small apartment filled with light. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison. Vivian would never be free. For years later, Margaret and Thomas walk every morning. They travel, read, and live quietly. The grief never leaves, but neither does their bond. Margaret learned that evil doesn't always arrive as a stranger. Sometimes it wears a familiar face. And sometimes, survival means choosing to live fully after the unimaginable. Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.